air travel has dramatically changed the way we live. Every year we make about 4 billion flights, a figure that's doubled in the last 12 years. And that figure keeps on rising. 16,000 planes can be in the air at any one time. But there's been a big cost to the environment. As the world warms, aviation is embarking on a new era. Sky taxis, powered by batteries, are already being tested around the world. The way we fly is about to be seriously disrupted.
Well, the most disruptive trends in aerospace, I believe we're at the cusp of a third revolution in aerospace. We're seeing new materials, we're seeing new technologies around autonomy and artificial intelligence for the first time applied in aerospace. And we're seeing really exciting opportunities around electric and electric propulsion. Bring all of those together with the Internet of Things as applied to aerospace, and you have some remarkable technology development and opportunities arising.
The history of the jet engine goes back much further than you might think. 2,000 years ago, Hero of Alexandria comes up with a basic design for a steam-powered jet engine. Fast forward to 1843, and aeronautical pioneer Sir George Cayley invents a steam-powered aircraft, very similar to the modern helicopter. Almost 100 years later, in 1930, Frank Whittle patents his W1 turbojet engine. It makes its first flight in 1941 in the Gloster-Whittle E-2839. Earlier, in 1939, American Airlines flew the first scheduled flight in what was then a luxury airliner, the DC-3. It took 16 hours to fly coast to coast across the United States. In 1969, Boeing launches one of the most enduring planes ever, the 747 jumbo jet. Its first commercial flight is with Pan Am in January 1970. Almost 50 years later, in 2016, Solar Impulse 2 becomes the first plane powered by renewable energy to complete a round-the-world flight. And by 2018, flight technology companies are locked in a race to become the first to develop battery-powered passenger planes. As cities get bigger and more congested, aviation companies are at the forefront of exploring new ways of redesigning urban transport.
We have a dream. We will shift the transport from the ground into the 3D, so we will use the third dimension.
Have you ever been stuck in traffic on your way to work and wished you could be flying above it rather than stuck in it? Well, if aircraft manufacturer Airbus gets its way, that's what we could all be doing in a few years' time, in one of these.
The idea behind the City Airbus project is VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing, just like a helicopter. The difference is, it runs on batteries.
We will fly in a dedicated airspace over the city. So this will be something between 150 meters and about 500 meters high. This will be done automatically, and the pilot is just there to intervene in case of any interactions which is not foreseen. Once we have the confidence and the public acceptance, we will remove the pilot and we will operate this fully autonomously.
Airbus hopes to have a full-size demonstration model ready to fly by the end of 2018. And it hopes to be flying paying customers to their destinations within a few years. A short drive away, a startup called Volocopter is developing its own version of a sky taxi. 9 batteries power 18 small propellers. Why so many?
Even in case of an external impact on, let's say, a bird strike, and you lose a number of the propellers, you want to make sure that the remaining system is still safe to either continue your mission or at least have a safe emergency landing.
Like Airbus, Volocopter wants its creation, eventually, to be fully automated and operate on demand.
Just like you would order a cab today, so you have an application on your mobile phone. It offers you different services. One of them is the Volocopter. You just select that transportation option, and the Volocopter autonomously comes and picks you up.
Volocopter completed its first public flight, without a test pilot, in September 2017 in Dubai. The biggest city in the United Arab Emirates wants to be the first place in the world to offer a sky taxi service. So Volocopter isn't alone. Other sky taxi startups are also working with the Dubai authorities.
It's not just Volocopter, there's a whole industry emerging. The interest worldwide is just increasing dramatically. Our clear vision is to make this accessible to everyone. It will start out as a more exclusive service initially, maybe for geared towards more business people, but at some point, with further acceptance and adoption, we see this as absolutely cost competitive to any ground transportation option.
There'll have to be strict regulations in place for them to operate safely, and probably the most significant challenge will be winning over the public's trust.
Trust, just like everything in life, is very difficult to build up, very easy to break. The real way you build trust up is by demonstrating it. It's by doing it. It's by building something and allowing society, allowing people to use it. And I think that's the next step on the journey.
Although gaining that trust could take time, these aviation disruptors are convinced sky taxis will one day become a significant part of our urban public transport system.
I think it will become reality in a couple of years. And yes, it is disruptive because it will change the way how we live and how we travel in cities. And I think this is a bit of a science fiction, and it becomes a reality now. So it's pretty cool to work on it.
It's likely that sky taxis and a new generation of short-haul passenger planes will be powered, at least in part, by electricity. This is because aviation faces a deadline. By 2050, the European Commission wants airlines to reduce CO2 emissions by 60%, nitrous oxides by 90%, and noise by 75%. With current technologies, this is simply impossible. So the race is on to find cleaner ways to fly.
Environmental considerations are hugely important for this sector. It's a sector that takes its environmental responsibilities extremely seriously. In fact, if you look over the last 30, 40 years, the evolution of technology to help achieve its environmental considerations have been huge, but they've been largely offset by the increase in air traffic management. So the drive to continually look for new technologies that will further contribute to the environmental considerations is huge.
This small plane is not what it seems, because it's not powered by the usual aviation fuel. Instead, it's packed with batteries. These are early days, but it's already got a range of 97 kilometers. It's been developed by the German company Siemens. Along with Rolls-Royce and Airbus, Siemens is also working on a larger aircraft, a hybrid passenger jet. The need to lower emissions, noise and costs is inspiring designs for cleaner, more fuel-efficient aeroplanes. This is just one example, the hydrogen fuel cell-powered HY4.
Battery technology is one of the key things that big companies around the world are investing in today. I think we'll see it in the first instance, much smaller aeroplanes. I think we will see a progressive, more electric power on the bigger aeroplanes, and we'll come up with this, we'll see this concept of hybrid electric, a combination of electric and gas turbine engines.
An American startup company, Zunum Aero, hopes to have a 12-seater hybrid electric plane in the sky by 2022. Another startup, Wright Electric, is even more ambitious. It believes it can put a fully electric plane in the air within the next 10 years.
The way the technology works is similar to how an electric car works. There's batteries that power an electric motor, and then in the case of an airplane, the electric motor powers propellers or fans, which actually get the plane into the air.
Wright is carrying out ground tests on an innovative design for a 9-seater plane.
Our goal is really to make zero emissions transportation ubiquitous. The market for electric airplanes is going to be large, we think, and we think there's lots of room for a number of different players.
Wright is also collaborating with the low-cost carrier EasyJet. It's hoping that in the future, planes like this could do short hop flights of around 500 kilometres.
Clearly we're in the very early stages at the moment. We think in 10 years' time there'll be some very finalised designs available, but then it'll have to go through a very kind of tough certification process.
Batteries will have to become much lighter and more efficient.
I think the biggest obstacle with an all-electric aircraft is carrying enough power to power the aircraft over a reasonable distance without too high a weight penalty. It's about getting the batteries efficient enough to be able to carry itself over the same range as one of our aircraft today.
For this reason, it's highly unlikely long-haul flights will ever be all-electric. The batteries would probably fill the entire plane. But short hops in smaller electric planes could become a reality. One of the great dreams of travel has been to have a vehicle that gives us ultimate freedom, the ability to drive and fly wherever and whenever we want. New materials and propulsion technologies are finally making this dream a little more realistic. Exactly what is this strange-looking vehicle? A flying car or a plane that drives?
You could fit it in your garage, you can drive it to an airport, you can unfold the wings and fly it to another airport, fold it up and drive to your destination.
It's called the Transition, a 2-seater flying car designed by US firm Terrafugia.
It's a 4-wheel car that can drive on the highways at 70 miles an hour. It can fly in the American airspace at 100 miles an hour. It can go 400 miles on a tank of gas. It meets all of the requirements, all of the regulations for both airplanes and cars in the United States.
It's a way to get us closer to this vision of having personal aviation be a part of how we all travel, how we all get around.
The co-founders came up with the idea of the Transition while studying aeronautics at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And they're being taken seriously. It's a small firm, but it's now been bought by the Chinese car maker Geely.
Now we finally found that big investor that can help move this from a cool concept to a reality that we can start to ship.
The company plans to start selling its flying car in 2019. But as you'd expect, they're not going to be cheap. The price tag is expected to be around $280,000. That's a lot of money for a vehicle that still can't land just anywhere.
One of the challenges of our first product is that you have to fly in and out of airports, and airports tend to be out in the suburbs. Most people want to get into downtown, right? So it's not really helping out with a commute.
Here's their answer to that problem. Carl and his team are developing the TFX, a car plane that can take off and land vertically.
The TFX is the next generation, or maybe the next generation vehicle. It doesn't require an airport, is the fundamental difference, right? It needs a small place to take off and land vertically. It really gets you very close to where you want to be.
Whether they use an airport or not, flying cars will have to meet very strict safety rules both in the sky and on the road, and costs are going to have to come down significantly.
I think that the next generation of aviation is going to be disruptive. It's going to be innovative. It's going to change the way we live, right? I'm absolutely convinced, or I wouldn't be in this job, right? The technology exists. It's ready to happen. I think the flight vehicles, the driving vehicles, those things are going to happen much sooner than even 10 years from now.
A number of other companies have similar visions. Each has its own idea of what the flying car will look like. The Slovakian firm Aeromobile has been testing this rather elegant-looking craft. while Dutch company PAL-V has come up with a helicar concept, a bit like a flying motorbike. But while these tests might look convincing, the truth is flying cars are not quite ready to take off just yet. What is disrupting modern aviation is not the age-old desire for speed, romance and glamour, but the need to respond to a changing climate. Lighter materials, battery-powered engines, autonomous technologies and artificial intelligence are all combining to create a much cleaner, more efficient, more integrated modern transport system.